You'll hear me.
Yep. Yeah, sounding good.
Yeah.
Right. Fingers crossed to those who are sort of listening in the background while the 15-second countdown goes in. Apologies if I drop out, and then Owen's just going to have to take over the intros.
Why not?
And we're back. All right. Welcome back to the All Things Aged Care Weekly Wrap-Up. This live stream is brought to you in collaboration with the Australian Aging Agenda, who have generously offered 2 tickets to the 2026 Positive Aging Summit, an event that drives the importance of reablement in aged care. So thank you, Mark Ryu and Natasha Egan, for offering double passes worth $2,000. We've yet to figure out a way to pick a winner, but it's on the agenda. I wasn't keen on that pun last week, but it's growing on me. I'm just going to keep going with it until it sticks. Yeah. As always, every week we do have a special guest, and today we have Paul Sadler, the principal of Paul Sadler Consultancy, former CEO of ACPA and AXA, co-founder of Invox, and chair of Meals on Wheels Australia. And I'm Anthony Nguyen, host of the Pioneers in Aged Care podcast. And as an aged care cheerleader and content creator, I showcase the innovators, the change makers, and the people who are inspiring the next wave of workers into an industry that is unfairly perceived as slow, boring, and stale. Speaking of innovators, we also have Robert Covino, founder and CEO of Mirus Australia. He's one of Australia's foremost voices in aged care innovation and data-driven transformation. He's also the driving force behind Mirus Plus, which is a platform that helps aged care providers turn policies into practical solutions. And rounding out our hosting crew is Owen Matheson, strategic connector and founder of Mission Critical Group. He's the guy who knows everyone, works with owners, boards, and executives, and has a knack for connecting the right people, opportunities, businesses, and capital to unlock growth, drive innovation, and make a real impact. A natural MC and all-round bringer of good vibes, Owen will be guiding most of our conversations, keeping things insightful and full of energy. Owen, over to you, buddy.
Challenge accepted. Thanks, Ant. And back by popular demand, we have none other than one of the original stalwarts and long-term veterans of the aged care sector, a passionate advocate of all things aged care, and doing a lot of really interesting work in home care. So, Paul, we've been looking at your bio, and what haven't you done?
Not much.
Not much.
I've had a go at frontline work as a social worker. I've had a go at being part of the government department and running the then home and community care program for the New South Wales government. I've led peak bodies. I've led an aged care provider for 14 years. And now I'm working in the sector as a consultant.
And what have you enjoyed most, or are they different seasons of life?
Yeah, I've enjoyed all of them in different ways, but I do think my period of time in the aged care peak bodies was probably the highlight of my career because it brought together my passion for advocacy and policy development. So when I was doing my undergraduate degree, I majored in government and public administration for my arts degree. And so I've always had that interest in influencing government policy and the process that you go through to do that in Australia. It brought together my passion for the sector as well. That leadership role, which really came to a crux when I stepped in following Pat Sparrow's departure from Aged and Community Services Australia during the middle of the pandemic and during the response to the Royal Commission. That was obviously a very pressured environment. There were days when I appeared on every single TV station, most radios, stations around the country, all of the major newspapers. And it was all because COVID had such a massive impact on the sector and a negative impact. We'd lost a third of our workforce to to the pandemic, and it meant that the care that we could provide for people living in residential care or in home care was severely compromised.
That
Those
would
are
have been
tricky times.
an incredibly challenging time, and obviously there's been a lot of sort of review into that post-mortem. But are there any what were your takeaways from that around, how we could do aged care better? You really got thrown in the deep end. You got thrown a whole lot of variables that no one really gets to encounter in the everyday. Were there some good learnings that came out of that that have really influenced and shaped policy and your passion for change?
Well, the first thing was I spent the first year of the pandemic in charge at Presbyterian Aged Care of services actually going through it. So I had that on the ground experience of what it was like leading people, what the concerns of residents were around the issues of access. We didn't get it right at the beginning, getting that balance between letting people in, but also protecting older people at the same time. So there were learnings that we had with all of that. And when it came to actually the position at AXA, it was much easier because I'd had that first-hand experience of leading an organisation actually through the details of the pandemic. So when we were, doing, whether it was those TV interviews on the breakfast shows or what, I could draw on the practical experience of our teams leading their services through the realities of the pandemic, and I knew what to talk about and how to translate that for people from a public perception point of view. And during a period when we could have lost the credibility and support of the public very easily, in actual fact, we came out of that period, in my view, stronger and with a better public perception of the aged care sector, which had taken a hit in the lead up to the Royal Commission. But, people, I think, appreciated that we were doing our best as a sector, and we had the welfare of older people as our primary concern.
And Rob, you were in the midst of that as well. What were your kind of and takeaways of that?
Yeah, I was honored on both sides. Actually, from a personal side, it was my father-in-law that entered care for the first time after a nasty fall from his Parkinson's to Royal North Shore Hospital, and at that time it was the acute sector. You just didn't want to go near it with the just with all of the infected patients in there, and so as a soon-to-be resident at that point, as we moved them into the Southern Highlands, and it was really strange because to enter somebody into care at that point and have 15 minutes to really drop off, orientate, and then you got to get out because that's the health orders and guidance for the safety of all the other residents, and I think it was it's still just a blur to me, but I was so impressed by how well the organizations that had to really implement these policies and how they ran the whole process around it. It was I guess it was the same industry that I'd been in, but it just felt so different, and it just felt like everyone just rose to the challenge, and so that was amazing. But also the organization he moved to was Harbison down in the Southern Highlands, and there was an A380 flight crew that we had pilots that unfortunately they didn't have any more work, so they were taking temperatures and checking people in, and
Wow.
And I just remember chatting with this gentleman and thinking, quite different to the aged care, and
Not the usual type.
Not the usual.
Was it the shiny
check-in.
badges giving them away, or the
Yeah,
hat?
just something like, "Are you ex-military, or where's this formality coming from?" And he said, "No, I'm actually the pilot, the captain of a A380 Qantas." That's
As you do.
They only took one
Wow.
of the, I think, the 5
Wow.
crews. They everyone else was stood down. So that was
Wow.
very very, very bizarre. But also I was, again, just reflecting on it, just so impressed how quickly
Yeah.
it all came together. And I think, to some of your points, Paul, I would touch on next, thinking about how we are fretting about November 1st and some of the new standards, but if we look back at that period in time, and everybody knew what to do, it was just like we trained, we know this, we're going to get on with it. And I think on reflection now, I think there's a little bit of that in there as advice to say, hey, we've taken on a pandemic, we've done these things, guys. We can we can do November 1st and beyond. So
I quite agree, Robert. I mean, at the end of the day, the pandemic period proves that Australia's aged care sector is really resilient. But the other learning was, from a workforce perspective, we didn't have any fat in the system in terms of additional workers who could actually go on to the front lines. And we were exposed because of that. And that was particularly a result of the various ACFI funding cuts that have happened over the previous 5 years or so, from 2016 through to 2020. You saw that in the decline in the financial performance of the sector. You saw that in people running really lean, brackets, sometimes mean, close brackets, staffing levels. And we didn't have anywhere to go when the pandemic hit and wiped out those third of the staff at the height of the Omicron wave. That is a lesson for us about, running a care system on such a low level of staffing. And we were just chatting off air before we came on live, and I was saying the care minutes targets are one of the really interesting aspects, I think, of policy change, and they've been reasonably successful in getting a much greater number of staff on the floor. Different question whether that's improving quality necessarily, but and I think the jury's still out on that to some extent. But there's no question that having more people available is a good thing and places us in a better position should we have another pandemic anytime soon.
The story of the pilots, is that a unique one that you might not have heard, Paul? Or how many different sort of groups of people came together to rally during that time? I mean, can you give us some insights there into how we solved that workforce shortage challenge?
Well, one of two ways. Firstly, we drew on every health professional that we could. But remember, one of our challenges at the time was the health sector was under the same pressures, plus you had registered nurses going into the COVID clinics. You had everybody competing for a scarce resource at the time. We swung the agencies that provide backup staff in and, use them to the max during the period. But then you had the calls that I and others made, notably Mike Baird at the time as CEO at Hammond Care, to get the Army involved. And we did have some great stories where the Army went in, very similar, Robert, to your experience with Harbison. Just these magical stories of older people in residential care reacting really positively to having these young blokes in and ladies in uniforms turn up, which was, of great attraction to the old men and the old women in the residential areas. These young uniformed people turn up.
Did you have any problem with blood pressure during that time?
Well, there might have been other consequences for some people. Yeah, it was. There were just some magical stories of communities pulled together. I mean, in the home care space, for example, in Meals on Wheels, we lost most of our volunteers during that period of time, because you might remember the state governments advised people aged 70 and over to stop volunteering or working.
Yes,
because of the
risk. They're at risk.
Yeah. And, a significant proportion of Meals on Wheels volunteers were people aged over 70. Mm-hmm. So we had, organisations that lost, 80, 90% of their volunteer workforce just overnight with the stroke of a pen from the state governments. Yeah. And you had stories of local communities who swung in behind that. And
love that.
Griffith in New South Wales was one such town where they moved from volunteers, the older people who used to be their volunteers, to getting the local businesses in the town to swing in behind the Meals on Wheels delivery. And that experience in Griffith was, echoed right around the country, where, people dig in and do the best they could in the circumstances.
There's good people in Griffith. They grow great grapes and produce great wines. I've spent a bit of time there with some of those families. I stayed at the home of Peter Barter, the founder of Barter Chickens, who literally employed half of Griffith at one point. You could drive through the town and you could see a Barter's Chickens ute in every second driveway. And they're just humble, hardworking, good, honest people. I'm not surprised by that. And you were also talking in our lead up about some interesting work you're doing on the home care side. So I'm mindful that we keep things on track, but love to hear more about Inbox. I believe you've got an upcoming event next week. Take us inside some of that and maybe the 30,000-foot view of what's going on in home care at the moment. Paul.
Yeah, so you've got it on the bottom of our screen at the moment, some of what's happening.
Yes.
Obviously, we've got the looming deadline for home care packages to change to support at home on the 1st of November. But you've also got some big questions around the future of the Commonwealth Home Support Program. So it's been delayed in its role into support at home for at least 2 years, so to 2027 at the earliest. But there's some very real questions about whether rolling CHSP in with support at home is going to be the best thing to do for older Australians. The support at home system is set up as an individual budget holder model. So you get your classification assessed by the assessment agency. You get a bucket of money. It's handled as an individual budget, and we're currently doing that for 300,000 home care package recipients. We're due to, potentially extend that to another 835,000 older Australians who receive CHSP services.
Wow.
But if you look at the dollar value that the average CHSP client receives, it's only $4,000 worth of service per annum.
That can't be enough.
Well, it's a question of whether it's enough or not.
Yeah.
But more significantly is why would you turn that amount of funding into an individual budget? What's your purpose in doing that? And we would argue from Meals and Wheels Australia point of view, and people like Ageing Australia and other peak bodies, that we really should be looking at the design of the system to continue grant-funded services, which are basically infrastructure services such as community transport, such as Meals and Wheels, such as home modification services. So that, we believe, is going to be pretty essential for the future. And this new CHSP alliance that we're getting together of national peak bodies interested in the future of that is going to be key. Ageing Australia's holding a summit later in September to look at that. Okay. And at Invox, we've looking at all of this issue of where does CHSP fit in the picture of Australia's aged care services at our conference, which is on the 4th, 5th of September, just in a couple of weeks' time.
So maybe give us a quick plug on the agenda there. Sorry, Rob, I didn't mean to cut across that. But for those who are listening and you've caught their attention, what should they expect in terms of the people that are coming and the type of outcomes you're seeking?
So we've got Robert Fitzgerald, the Age Discrimination Commissioner, kicking off the event. Wow. So he's very much going to come at what is the role of the Commonwealth Home Support Program, what are the human rights perspectives around what older people should be able to expect from service delivery, and which are actually going to be the best approach to funding that system in the future. So Robert's got some very strong opinions around that. So we'll be hearing from him first off. Then we've got, presenters talking about the aged care reforms. The new Aged Care Act comes into effect on the 1st of November. It captures CHSP services for the first time. So what's the implications of that? So we've got the Aged Care Quality and Safety Commission, the department. We'll be hearing from around that. And then we're going to have panels and keynote speakers through the rest of the 2 days who really unpack the practical implications of all of that for service delivery, and to pose some of those questions of where to from here for CHSP. And I'll be participating and hosting some of the panels on the way through, and I think I'll get a gig at the very end of the event on a wrap-up panel, which I and Jodie Livesley, who's a sector support development person from the Central Coast of New South Wales, and Roland Norful, who's my co-founder of Invox, will be wrapping up the conference talking about what's that all mean for us.
So you're saving the best to last, is that what you're saying?
Of course.
It sounds like a really comprehensive program. I didn't want to cut across you, Rob, but I did want to ask one thing. We've got priority 3 there. There were 2 other priorities. You attended the National Aged Care Alliance Forum last Friday. We don't want to miss some of your big 5 from that. What would be top of mind for you as issue number 1 and 2 that we all need to be mindful of and have constructive dialogue around?
Yeah, so the National Aged Care Alliance represents around 50 national peak bodies from the provider sector, the consumers, the professional associations and the unions in the sector. So it's a collective group. It's existed for 25 years now. It was set up in the year 2000 initially, and forms a good overview of the aged care sector. It's got most of the key players around the table. So from NACA's perspective, one of the key issues is, where's the reform agenda up to? Are we ready for the 1st of November? We're going to be more ready for the 1st of November than we would have been on the 1st of July, but there's still things to happen. So there's amending legislation that's in Parliament at the moment. We just got a report from the Senate committee handed down yesterday on that. And that's basically recommended that amending legislation should be passed as soon as possible. So I think Parliament's back sitting next week. So we'll see whether that gets through the Senate next week. Then, yeah, that would be good. Then we've got to see the finalisation of the aged care rules by Minister Sam Ray. And then the government's got to actually implement it all. So there are some key things which providers still cannot actually do, including issuing the updated agreements, which are going to be necessary, particularly for the support home changes. There are new prices that are going to apply that the consumers have to agree to. There's changes in contract terms because of the new legislation in place. So all of that has to be done by the 1st of November. Then you've got the issue of whether the government will actually be able to pay us on the 1st of November.
That would help.
Yes. And we believe that Services Australia says it's got the systems ready to go, but it won't have tested them before the 1st of November.
No.
So good luck.
Rob, you're right in the thick of this, aren't you? What are you hearing from your
clients?
Yeah.
It's not
Is this
data,
therapy for you?
It's Proda. It's Services Australia. They're building the aircraft as we fly. Yes. No. It is certainly. It's interesting because, like, as a vendor as well, software vendors, think about a world where you have limited resources and capital to invest in aligning all of these systems, and you're sitting there just waiting for API documentation and all the things that are needed to have the whole ecosystem, which is really what is then enabling these processes to come into practice. Everything from resident agreements that. We work with Russell Kennedy, and they do all of our agreements. So they've baked them as much as they can, but it's also you're sort of building for what is still not known yet, which is just mad in any other type of software development world. But you just have to as well, because I think as a sovereign company and dedicated to a sector. That's how we differentiate ourselves, by knowing so much of that local knowledge and being there and actually interpreting from what Paul sees, what other consultancy and other advisors, and you sort of go, well, I'm not a betting man. If I was, I think it's got a pretty good fact. We can probably keep going on this path because it's not going to change, and they do get some things wrong, and they move it, but this is more on the technical side. But it's been a roller coaster, and it's been stretching a lot of vendors out there, and hence why we're seeing a lot of overseas capital buying up a lot of our technology for our human services sector, because it's been a lot of responding and transformation that has been very reactive and not well planned out, which makes it down the stream very difficult.
Paul, what do you think in terms of? I mean, we've got a new minister coming up to speed, Sam Ray, but we've also got, the requirement for policies to be practical. Do you feel like there's enough in consultation across the stakeholders?
How can I answer that most effectively? Yes and no and maybe are all true at different times.
Very diplomatic.
There's been a lot of consultation.
Yes.
But whether the government's listened is another question. because some of the design elements, for example, of the Support at Home program, Invox has commented very publicly about some of those. The peak bodies have commented. We've just seen the Senate Community Affairs inquiry into aged care service delivery. The submissions closed today. So I put my Meals on Wheels Australia submission in just before coming online for this. So,
great multitasking challenge.
Exactly. There's plenty of voices being put in there. There have been opportunities for those to be put forward, but has the government actually listened and changed in fundamental ways its proposed model? Well, in the case of the Support at Home program model, they released it in about 2 years ago now, and they haven't fundamentally changed it since, even though from the perspective of many of us looking at it, it's got some deep design flaws to it. And it remains to be seen what happens after the 1st of November.
I like it. I certainly see what's happening with the Support at Home, intentions, and I think it's also it's created more accommodation models outside of just ILUs and residential aged care, and that's something we've needed for a long time. But the group home model and those elements are something that's significantly on the rise. And even I live in the Rocks in Sydney in an apartment building. I've got my mother-in-law on about 6 floors below us, who Owen has we've got some funny stories about.
Oh yeah, we do.
But she's just being in the building, and then also having that that knowledge that Support at Home is going to enable her to stay there for really a very long time. I think it's great. I'm seeing other providers, and I've set up a couple providers where we are helping them really reflect the aged care model, but in a privatized version, because our Australian knows the residential aged care frameworks, the RADs and DAPs and those elements, and that's starting to blend into this a privatized model, but the delivery of it is going to be enabled by the Support at Home, and especially if we go up to 13 classifications. So it's going to give a lot of more optionality to families that are living and acting as primary carers now, and it does get exhausting, and I saw it with my family as well, that you do it as long as you can, and once everything is I guess exhausted, that's really when the residential discussion comes into place. But this is great initiative, and I really hope it continues to evolve.
I think we'd love to check in with you on the progress of that. I mean, 2 years and Support at Home still having some fundamental design challenges, for you to sort of feed in what you're hearing from the stakeholders, because we are all things aged care, but home care is a 10x market, and there are millions of Australians that are counting on the right inputs into that design. So we'd love you to keep us posted on that wherever you can, Paul.
Happy to, Owen. And it's always worth reminding people there are 1.3 million older Australians who receive care services, formal care services. 1.1 million of those receive them at home. So there's only 200,000 older Australians at any one time who are residents in residential aged care. The other 1.1 million are receiving home care, and most of those receive CHSP, the 835,000 figure I mentioned earlier.
So it's only going to grow. So we need to get those structural issues solved. And I know we've crossed over, and we're into our live open mic segment now. Anything could happen. Are you ready, Paul?
I am.
Someone backstage. We had someone jump on backstage, and she jumped back off. So hopefully I can invite her back in. But until then,
hard to get that guest.
Yeah, and I'm also crossing my fingers hoping I don't cut out again. I've had some technical difficulties, but thankfully every time I cut out and restart the computer, you guys can keep continuing the conversation and I can jump back in. So
but it's not the same without you, Ant. You've got to come back, mate.
Oh well,
Well, I-
maybe in this
It's like
conversation,
equilibrium. We're off kilter the moment you leave.
like, everything. This is why I love technology today, because everything that Paul has discussed, and this is what happened during Paul's podcast as well. I went back, put the transcription into ChatGPT, and said, "Explain everything Paul said like I'm 5," and that's what I'm going to do with this episode. It's going right over my head. I'm just nodding along, pretending I know what
nod and
you guys are
smile.
talking about. I'm super appreciative that you can prompt additional questions. So yeah, I'm here for
I've
the
got
vibes.
some. No, I've got a. This,
Bring on the
it's funny.
vibes.
It's funny when you when you talk about
Yeah.
something and then all of a sudden it just starts appearing everywhere around you for weeks and weeks.
So true.
And
Yes.
and certainly, Paul, we had this discussion a couple months back with your work down in the Illawarra task force related to some of the hospital bed blockages. And
Yes.
it is certainly a challenge, an issue around the country, the bed block. But I guess for the listeners, I guess what is firstly bed block? Maybe just explain what it looks like in hospitals and what is it for some of the listeners that may not know it.
Yeah, absolutely. So bed block is a term which I personally hate, and most other people do too, because it's incredibly disenfranchising to older people who are on the receiving end of it, because it kind of implies that you shouldn't be there. Something was wrong. You should have been prevented from going into the hospital in the first place. Whereas in actual fact, what we're talking about, and this is backed up by the data from the research Professor Kathy Eager and I are doing in the Illawarra, the vast majority of the older people who are bed blocked have come into hospital with a genuine acute care need. They are brought into hospital by an ambulance, so they're not just people who are coming in off the streets. They have an acute episode which requires treatment, and if you like, they're legitimate users of the public hospital system. But, and it's a big but, what happens to them is when their condition stabilises, they then get stuck in hospital because there isn't an appropriate aged care service available for them. Now, whether that's a residential aged care service or a home care service, they can't access that sufficiently quickly. There's also a group of people who are getting stuck in the hospital system who need an NDIS package. So they're younger people. And between the NDIS group and the aged care group, you've got something like probably it's up now to around 3,000 people nationally at any one time who are stuck. In New South Wales alone, they're talking about around 1,600 people being stuck in hospitals who are looking for appropriate alternatives. In the Illawarra region, at any one time, there's somewhere between 100 and 150 older people who have been assessed as eligible for residential aged care and who are awaiting a bed to move into. What are the reasons for some of this? Well, firstly, residential care bed numbers in Australia have been flat for at least the last 5 years, and in the Illawarra region it actually goes back a decade. So there's been no net new beds in the Illawarra region for the last decade. I pulled these stats for New South Wales just recently, and New South Wales has had no net bed increase across the state for the last 5 years.
How does this happen, Paul? I don't want to stop your flow, but these are long periods of time. And no doubt there's consideration. Is it just a budget, or is it priorities?
It's multiple factors. the first factor is that the financial circumstances of residential care went through that really significant dip from 2016 onwards, and just got deeper and deeper into debt. And we're only just beginning to see a return to some sort of financial health in the residential care sector. And in a circumstance where you're running deficit budgets, who would invest in new bed stock? Secondly, we had the pandemic. So the consequence of the pandemic was that construction basically ceased in many places. You didn't have people feeling like they could venture out and develop new residential care buildings in the middle of a pandemic. And obviously, construction costs have been rising. So when I was in Presbyterian aged care, which is only 5 odd years ago now, you could reasonably expect to build a new residential care bed for somewhere between $250,000 to $350,000. Now it's somewhere up around $550,000, maybe even $650,000 to construct a new residential care bed.
And that's without the land too, right, Paul?
That's exactly right. So when you add on the other costs, such as land, it becomes simply unaffordable for many people. Another factor is that the government funding for accommodation supplement has been flat and not matching those cost increases of construction at all. You also had the artificial limit on RAD levels. So we saw the rise of that from 550 to 750 as the maximum permissible. Now, it's not actually a maximum because you can apply to the Independent Health and Aged Care Pricing Authority to charge more than that. But the reality is that often in the mindset of many providers was kind of like a threshold and you couldn't charge above that
psychological level. Barrier.
Yeah. So some of this is provider-led problems. Some of it is other issues, planning approvals. Just heard about the last couple of days, the Economic Roundtable. Well, those same issues that are affecting the construction of wind farms are also affecting the construction of residential aged care. We have significant delays through councils, through state governments in the planning areas. So it's multifactorial, the factors which have led to that constraint on the residential care area. The other key issues are actually to do with resident characteristics and the ability of the residential care services to actually care for the residents' needs. So one striking thing that we found in the Illawarra was the average length of stay for these people getting stuck in hospital is 66 days. The average patient who comes into acute care stays for 4 days. So they're staying, more than 10 times greater than the average acute care patient. They then you look at what their needs are. Can they be cared for in a residential care service? If you have dementia and you need a dementia-specific place, you were staying an extra 12 days in hospital.
Wow. So we're talking 2.5, 3 months that they're in suspended animation. What is a realistic target?
That's the average.
That's the average.
Yeah. There were some people who were stuck for up to a year.
NDIS on average is 11 weeks in New South Wales.
So by that stage, they're getting mail to, they live there. They're basically getting rates. I mean, this is unbelievable. How does this change, and what is an acceptable timeline in your view?
Well, so one of the things we've done is make some recommendations to the Community Industry Group, who's the regional peak body for the sector, which has commissioned the work, to the Illawarra Shoalhaven Local Health District and the Ministry of Health in New South Wales, who actually funded the project, and also to the Commonwealth Government, the Department of Health, Disability and Ageing. So we're working with the regional team for the southeast of the state, looking at what sort of practical on-the-ground solutions we can come up with. Some of the solutions are residential aged care services making as much use as possible of current building stock, transferring to get some people into those rooms which, you know, weren't being used as bedrooms, converting them into bedrooms, actually being conscious to speed up the admission process wherever possible, because if you have people delayed in hospital, if you can get them out even just a couple of days quicker, it all makes a difference. But some of it is going to take time. You know, if we're talking about building new resident aged care stock, even if we improved the planning process, talking about, you know, 3, 4, 5 year timeframes to build new aged care buildings. You're not
slow wheels.
You're not going to solve the problem of a decade where you've had no growth in residential care in the region overnight.
And the
those are very slow wheels to turn. Can I just ask one question? With the Ministry of Health, a shout out to these good people that are causing this data to surface. So you've got an empirical basis on which to challenge the slow wheels that are turning. Who would you like to give a shout out to in terms of the people that have sponsored that initiative and have made sure that that's happened?
So a big shout out to Nikki Sloan, who used to be my colleague in ACPA.
Good on you, Nikki.
Yes, who is the head of the Community Industry Group. Mark Sewell, who was the former CEO.
Oh, Mark. Yes, we're going to actually have him on the show shortly.
Great. So Mark would be great to follow up this discussion with because he's been a key mover. An acknowledgement to the support we've had from the local health district. So Margot Mains and her team at the local health district, that they've seen it as a key issue. I've been working with my colleagues on the New South Wales Ministerial Advisory Council on Ageing, and we've just prepared a report which hopefully will be released soon on the issue from a statewide perspective. So there's lots of different people interested in the issue. We've definitely got the attention of Ryan Park, the Minister for Health. Firstly, he's a local member down in Illawarra, but
there's nowhere to go.
Yes. Secondly, he's obviously got a statewide perspective on this issue, and I do believe that this issue is getting raised in the regards to the new National Health Reform Agreement. So it's on the agenda for Mark Butler and state and territory ministers as well.
Sorry to jump in there, but shout out to all those people you mentioned. Shout out to Linda Henderson for their comment. Yes. We've got someone backstage. I want to add it to the stage. Here is Cara Hills. Cara, do you want to quickly introduce yourself, and then
hi, Cara.
The floor is yours.
Hi, Anthony. Hi, guys. Hello again, Paul. We collaborated.
Cara.
Yes, we collaborated during the pandemic. I'm Cara Hills from Viridia. So I do marketing. We serve the aged care industry, and I just jumped onto this, watching this podcast, live podcast, whatever it's called, just pretty recently. So I don't know if you've discussed like the labour and the time impacts of. I'm more familiar with residential, but both residential and home care situation in Australia at the moment. Also would be really interested, Paul, seeing as you've been doing this research about in the Illawarra area with the hospitals and everything, what the difference is between any labour shortages and also the time spent on patient care in a hospital versus a aged care residential facility. Anything that you've found out with that? So it's just my
Great questions. Love your work, Cara.
Thank you.
So, Cara, firstly, we haven't specifically looked at the amount of time that gets spent in a hospital setting with patients versus an aged care setting. One comment is staffing levels are higher in hospitals than they are in residential aged care, or particularly in home care. So, you know, if we're talking about care minutes targets, you know, you're talking about having, you know, maybe 215 direct care minutes per resident per day. Well, you know, that's about 3 hours. You know, that's
the target in aged care.
The target for direct care.
Yeah.
Now,
but they would have more than that in a hospital. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I spent some time having had a stroke in hospital a couple of years back.
Sorry to hear that, Paul.
Yeah.
It was after I finished up with ACPA. About 6 weeks after finishing up there, I had a stroke, which says something about the pressure that was going on.
And it says about your commitment as well, Paul. We recognise that.
So anyway, not to be a sob story, but my personal experience was there's a lot of people in a hospital. Yeah. Doesn't mean though you have someone in your room all the time in the hospital any more than you do in residential aged care, but there's people moving around all 24 hours a day in a hospital. The impact of workforce shortages though have absolutely come up. So from the point of view of the residential care services having to accept people, there's been two particular workforce shortages that have been pointed out. The first is the general shortage of aged care workers. Mm-hmm. So while that has definitely improved since the aged care work value case went through the Fair Work Commission, we've seen those pay increases flow, and that has underpinned some of the ability to attract those additional staff to meet the care minutes targets. That doesn't mean that it's equivalent right across the state, nor that any individual provider isn't going to find difficulties in filling some parts of the roster at some times. So we still have an impact from staff shortages. We've got particular impacts with particular professional groups, notably some of the allied health professions where there's some significant overall workforce shortages. The other key...
the fact that, sorry to interrupt, but just the fact that we're with the general workforce shortage in aged care, you can potentially access agency staff, but with allied health, that's not an option, is it? So that makes it even more difficult.
Virtually impossible, yeah, that's right. So we have seen the number of people, agency provided staff falling quite significantly recently.
Interesting.
The Salvation Army, for example, have cut their agency use in residential care from around 10% of staff a couple of years ago to only 1% of staff now. And
Yes.
they do attribute that significantly to the pay increase and the fact that the aged care workforce is much more attractive now. But the other shortfall is GPs. So some residential care services are saying we can't admit people, particularly who've got difficult behaviours with dementia, where we don't have access to a GP to actually oversee their medical care.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So the lack of GPs is absolutely forming a part of the problem at the moment.
We do have a quick question. Linda Henderson has been great. This is her second question. The first was about the fact that people with acute care needs and how many there were in the Illawarra. And the second question was, do you know how many people in Illawarra hospitals have dementia? Is there any sense of the scale of that, and given that GP supervision requirement?
Robert, do you just want to mention the couple of points you've made in the chat?
Yeah, I was just going to put out there some data from the hospital admissions in, well, firstly, people living with dementia in the Illawarra area is just over 4,000, so 4,060, but they're projecting that to jump up to about 7,800 in the next 20 years. So it is still an emerging condition, and one that presents very differently to the different types of dementia, atypical versus some of the Alzheimer's dementia, but specifically with the hospital aspects of it, that's quite interesting. I think one of the stats we have on in the dementia prevalence of the hospital side, there's roughly, it's mostly Australia-wide data, but there's over 26,000 admissions across Australia every year for dementia or dementia related. So that's over 400,000 bed days on average that these admissions are taking up. And I think if we think back to some of the bed blockage context,
yes,
as well as some of the other NDIS, average NDIS stay with the bed blockage is 11 weeks. 11 weeks is very difficult. But also, if you think about the tax on the people, the resources, the fact that is an environment that has been having up for some of the most extreme cases that we could think about to treat, and having that level of I guess wastage, is that what we refer to as, Paul? But it's certainly just as the Productivity Commission measures productivity, certainly bed block days are a view of inefficiency that costs the government billions of dollars every year.
Just as an example, that up to 150 patients stuck in Illawarra, that's 20% of the acute care beds in Illawarra.
Right.
So it's having a major impact on the hospital system in the Illawarra. Roughly a third of the cohort which were ACAD assessed had needed a dementia-specific bed. So they were the people who were stuck for an extra 10 to 12 days in hospital on average, on top of that 66-day everyone else average. But many of the other people had a level of cognitive impairment or dementia as well. So many of the older people you're probably talking about 70 to 80% had some level of dementia.
Yeah.
What impact does deferred day surgery or minor surgery have on that? When certain specialists can't attend.
It doesn't tend to affect the group that we're talking about who gets stuck in bed block because they tend to have come in not for surgery. They've come in as general admissions via the emergency department. So they're not coming in for booked surgery. But there is an impact if you've got 20% of your beds tied up.
Mm.
the ability to provide that surgery
Yeah,
is impacted.
that's a real
So,
squeeze on capacity.
Yeah, it has an impact across the whole of the rest of the system.
Yeah.
Well, we've
Hey,
got
last
Linda
question
with another
from,
great question. Yep.
we'll do this
Sorry,
last
and over to you.
No, we'll just do this last question from Linda, and
Yes.
then we'll wrap it up there, and then we'll raise the roof to all our participants.
Yes, we
So, yeah,
will.
the question, I'm wondering how many admissions are because families can no longer cope with limited hours of in-home support.
Yeah, Linda, probably quite a few of them. We don't actually know precisely that because the way we did the study for the first time looked at people who were assessed by the aged care assessment team in the hospital as needing care. We didn't have a picture of what happened to them before the hospital admission in our data set. But as soon as you talk to any of the patients involved or you talk to the aged care providers, they'll tell you that family pressure, limited hours of availability of in-home support is absolutely part of the issue.
And just
I can
quickly,
actually-
Paul, would
sorry.
that... Sorry, Cara, after you, please.
Sorry. I can actually contribute a bit of a personal anecdote here because my grandmother last year, it was August last year, so it's just gone a year, had a reasonably extended stay in hospital, about 2 weeks, not 11 weeks like you've been talking about, but and that was that was a combination of family pressure. It was a combination of a gastro issue that we couldn't handle, and it all just sort of tumbled down. And then so from that first 2 weeks, we ended up having to call the ambulance a second time because the initial issue hadn't actually been solved. So I would be interested to know, like, whether there are any rates of like readmission and what are they, how are they impacting the bed block? Obviously, if the issue is not being able to be admitted to aged care, that's a different issue. But it definitely does affect the family situation and care.
Yeah, Anthony, I know you need to wrap us up,
Yeah.
so I won't try and answer that.
We can you guys stay on. We'll wrap up. You guys, everyone on screen, don't log off. Firstly, let's raise the roof for Linda Henderson.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paul.
And then we'll go Cara. Thank you. So the link is in the
Cara.
wild. Anyone can click in, go backstage. I'll add you on. You ask a question. Thank you so much, Cara, for breaking the ice on that, being the first one to jump in and being
Great
contributing.
Love that bravery for a good cause. Raise the roof for Cara.
Cara.
Thanks, guys.
Paul, thank you so much, Paul. Love chatting to you as always. And ChatGPT is going to explain it all to me.
That's right. And there'll be a test next weekend, so study hard.
I will.
That's right.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Don't forget, let's all
together.
make
So proud
aged
of you
care
all.
better, everyone. God bless.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you all.
All right. Don't log off.